Hello, I'm Jenefer of Jenefer Luxury and welcome to my podcast. Here I will be talking about clothing brand, startup business, and entrepreneurship. In this episode, I will talk about my journey on how I became Jenefer Luxury brand and why I am now on podcast. I have this realization while I was making a system for my marketing. Why not having a podcast? My content on other social media platforms were always very short. It is like almost an outline. Here I can explain more in depth and let's see how long this would take. Would it be 10 or 20 minutes long? So in this episode, it's like looking back on how I started about everything. I always asked myself how would it be if I pursued vlogging early on. Now I can say that I did not regret on the path that I chose early on. That time, my son wanted to be a vlogger and since he was just a little boy, he asked me to do the video editing. I kind of think, what if I'll do something like this also, so I can help him more or much way better because I didn't know video editing the time. But then, I chose to concentrate on mastering my technical skills and the fashion designing instead. As an entrepreneur, I wanted to be a fashion designer. I need to learn to draft the pattern, learn the sewing. At that time, I already knew straight sewing. I had been sewing and selling free-size dresses before coming to Canada, but I want to be able to make a plain well-fitting, excellently tailored, perfectly patterned cut clothes, really to master that technical side. Every time I have a chance to go out, I went to high-end stores, not to shop because I can't afford those, but to check clothes on the inside on how they made it, what kind of stitch and materials they used. I knew since I was in high school that I am going to have my own clothing brand. For my entire years on high school, it never changed. Only that when I was out of that school, I realized that there was no fashion school available in our place. I should be in metropolitan city, which definitely we can't afford. I followed my father's advice to take Bachelor of Science in Accountancy. Working on accounting for more than 10 years, it made me think again of what business I'm gonna do. I remember I wrote down all the things I love doing and I always came back to fashion designing. While I was still working on the accounting, I always wanted to learn sewing the time already, but I don't have sewing machine. For me, the time I would be the happiest if I can get a sewing machine. It's funny, but it was real. I even have that imagination to make my own wedding gown. Now back on how I started learning the basic. I was a self-taught fashion designer. When we just came to Canada, I inquired how to study a fashion designer. Aside from the almost 30,000 Canadian tuition fee, I also need to set up a sewing place at home. I don't have the money for tuition fee, but I thought I can start setting up a sewing place at home slowly. The moment I got the sewing machine, I started accepting sewing jobs. At first, it was curtains, friezes, traces, and alterations. Then I leveled up to drafting a pattern. I made patterns from underwear, shorts, swimwear, pants, traces, coats, and more. And I did make a real project out from those patterns. For 3 years, I've been accepting all kinds of sewing jobs at home. I have fashion designers client for contract sewing. It inspired me to start my own shop to position myself as a fashion designer. It was there that I collaborated with photographers, models, and with the community. I exactly knew what clothes my brand would be. Now back to how I started to be. Since I started sewing at home to having a shop for custom dresses and gowns, I had this idea to have custom shop through online. I was able to get an investors to cover for the overhead expenses for a year to start a clothing brand. The custom gowns and dresses took off while we will build our Pastora Premium. That time, we outsourced our products for merchandising, shorts, and our scrub suits. For the Pastora Premium, I see to it that I will be the one to produce it. I made that line because of my impeccable taste for materials. That is why we have that Pastora School of Fashion. I really wanted to help aspiring fashion designers to pursue what they love to do and wanted to develop a sewing manufacturing here in Philippines. I am very thankful for that vision. Because of that, I am here now. No one knows the time that COVID will come at year to 2020, where businesses are closing. After I split up with my business partner, I stayed here in Philippines and continued to build my brand. I can't just stop. I invested many years for this passion, not only time and money. I also have investors. Jenefer Luxury came and here all the learnings that I had from those experiences would be my asset that I can use with this brand. I was excited and scared at first. I was determined to start without money because I have investors with Postura. I need to build a brand. I am forever grateful they trusted me. I shifted fully to online. People can't understand me since COVID was not here yet that time. Only now that they absorb the thought that the traditional business is obsolete. Since I am here in Philippines, it means I am not going to spend money on rent and other expenses. It means I can concentrate on branding and marketing. I don't need to accept custom gowns and dresses to compensate for the overhead expenses. It took me almost 3 years to fully set up my home studio. Working on the marketing side for this era, not only that it needs time and knowledge, but it also means investing on the marketing gear. On that side, I am thankful to my son. He had those gears. He was the one pushing me to work on professional level. At first, I was just posting for documentary purposes. Learning a lot from my 10 years on fashion industry, I wanted to share my knowledge and experiences. It is my job to share these topics on being a self-taught fashion designer. Teach basic accounting knowledge for young entrepreneurs, branding and marketing. That's a lot. Now I am learning on podcast. You can expect me here talking about me being an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, what business industry I choose, why I choose the fashion industry. As a self-taught fashion designer, how basic business accounting knowledge should be taught to aspiring designers and why branding and marketing is now the core of your business. Here I will start my story, why I pursued this building a brand, where no one understands me. Building a brand is like connecting the puzzle. It was like everyone was scared for me. I get it, but I know exactly what I am doing. I did not become a Jenefer luxury overnight. It took me 10 years. 10 years. It's a decade. I did not start in a glamour. No one believed me that I am going to build a brand. When I started sewing, they said, what a waste of time. They told me I was not using my brain. How could anyone who had a good job in accounting quit her job and do sewing? I totally understand them. Promise. There's more. I am also a registered nurse. So for them, if I quit on my accounting job, why not go into the healthcare industry? After 2 years of me sewing curtains, pillows, bedsheets, and free-size dresses, we got our visa to migrate in Canada. Then there in Canada, I continued sewing. A lot of people was disappointed with me. To them, what I was doing was very low, but not to me. I was honing my sewing skills. Those years, I slowly working on my business. What would be my brand? I can't even imagine how did I survive those sleepless nights, ripping the clothes I was making because the fit wasn't right. So much time on ripping compared to sewing. I also have this experience where I thought 1 week would be enough for me to do that contract sewing, which I accepted. It has happened that it was scheduled to be finished next to the bridesmaids' entourage that I accepted also. It means I don't have time to make it in advance until the wedding is done. I can't forget that I was sewing for 48 hours straight. I don't have time for a break, even to eat. I was determined to finish that contract sewing, then explaining to my client why I didn't make it. After they pick it up, I slept for 24 hours straight. I took my time to learn properly. Knowing the technical side is very important. You can't make an avant-garde if you don't go through learning the basic. After 3 years sewing at home in Canada, I took the risk to start a shop at 6th Avenue in Calgary. I was ready that time to position myself as a fashion designer. Having that shop, I started learning slowly the body typing, branding, and marketing. It took me another 3 years to learn these things. It didn't stop there until now. I am still learning every day. What I didn't know is I can work also as a model. I discovered that when I have no choice but to do the marketing also. I don't have the money for marketing. I have to learn to speak in front of the camera. I am shy and I am not good at speaking. My podcasting is also my way to improve my speaking. I would be so happy if I can speak spontaneously in front of the camera. I have a lot of topics to talk to. You know why? I think I have a very good memory that I still remember the books and novels that I read since I was in high school. I read 1 book or novel a day from high school to college days up to now, but now is not a book a day since there's a lot to learn in YouTube, Google, podcast, and more. I hope you can learn a lot from this podcast also. Before starting to launch this, I already have plans. Looks like a lesson plan for the next episodes. It's quite full since I will not talk only everything about an entrepreneur. I am specific to fashion designer or fashion industry, and I included body typing on my vlog. Not only that I will be talking why an entrepreneur or a fashion designer needs to learn basic practical accounting also, and also branding and marketing. You know why? Because a lot of fashion designers, to mention, who are on the creative side only. In that case, most probably you will be working as the creative director or a fashion designer, but you can't run a business all by yourself. Our era now is very different, especially with fashion industry. Before, it is very difficult to have a clothing brand without money. Who can be the CEO at the same time, the creative director, the CFO, COO, and CMO? As early as you being on the learning process and the technical skills, you can also learn some of those in order for you to be able to have more choices. Even starting on with money, it's so much advantage if you know the accounting side. It means you can read business numbers, you can make practical decisions, you can avoid a lot of stress or mistakes on financial aspects of the business, because this is the reality. So many people thought that successful brands, they became successful because of the creative team or even just because of the marketing guy. Now this is one of the reasons why an entrepreneur who has the knowledge on reading business numbers well, who knew basic accounting, starting without money is possible. It is like being someone who can afford to buy a car and being able to drive it. Anyone can buy a car as long as you can afford it, but if you don't know how to drive a car, it means you need a driver. The same with people who have the money. They can buy brands and hire people to run that business. For someone who can get a car through loan, you have time, you have to drive by yourself, or else that would be so impractical if you hire a driver. Yes, you can still hire a driver even if you get the car through loan, but it means it's an additional expenses. So many successful brands are successful but not the business itself. They build the brand but they have to give it up because it is losing for so many years, and selling it will be the only option they can have. That is why branding, that is why building the brand is very important. As important as running the business well. There might be a lot of factors why the business fail, but if you build the brand will rise. When business fail, the brand will rise. There's a way on building a brand and business as well. Here's the way: learn the accounting side. Everything is a matter of choice. People who have the money has this option to splurge money. Take a risk to venture to the business they want. If you can read business numbers well, then I think he will be okay. But if not, then promise he's melting his money. It depends how deep his pocket is. It's just a matter of time. On the other side, there's this entrepreneur who had this business idea that he has no money to start. It depends on the business idea he had and how determined he would be. Why do you have that business idea? Because that's your passion? Then you can learn the skills from there. You can slowly move to step 2. I figured this out since the beginning of my learning the sewing skill. People don't know why I was doing that. They thought I was just wasting my time. But you can't believe if you tell them why you're doing that, they will laugh at you harder. I think the reason why I knew exactly what to do since I started my sewing skill was because I knew accounting very well. As simple as assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity, or 2 equals 1 plus 1. From there, anyone can come more. It will become complicated the more knowledge you need. For young entrepreneurs, draw the big picture of your business idea and separate it into different pieces. Practice putting it back together slowly. There's so many ways on how to put it back. No one can say that this is the right way to put it back. Everyone can have their own strategy. Some will take their time to think first before they will start putting the pieces together. Some will just take different pieces and try it, but no patience and looking for the other pieces, so it would take so much time for him to finish the puzzle. Some will just start, but when they realize it is so much harder than they thought, they will quit. Now for those who are determined to put the pieces back together, let's learn each piece of that puzzle. Look for the pieces of the Chief Executive Officer, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Operation Officer, Chief Marketing Officer, and in the fashion industry include the Chief Creative Officer. Do you think you can put those pieces together? Are you willing to lock all those pieces together by yourself? Or you want a partner whom you can trust? Do you have money to hire people who can help you with those pieces? From the start, I knew I didn't have the money. Looking at those pieces, a lot of those pieces I already knew. I can take my time to learn for the pieces that I don't know yet. For me, what are those pieces? The Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. Yours might be different. From the start, I knew I didn't have the money. Looking at those pieces, a lot of those pieces I already knew. From the start, I knew I didn't have the money. Looking at those pieces, a lot of those pieces I already knew. I can take my time to learn for the pieces that I don't know yet. For me, what are those pieces? The Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. Yours might be different. From the start, I knew I didn't have the money. Looking at those pieces, a lot of those pieces I already knew. I can take my time to learn for the pieces that I don't know yet. For me, what are those pieces? The Chief Creative Officer and Chief Marketing Officer. Yours might be different. You might knew what I don't know yet, and you don't know for the pieces I already knew. At this moment, after 10 years when I just started the sewing skill as my first step on learning to be a chief creative officer, I am also mastering my skills on marketing the CMO pieces. I hope you can write it down. And have you noticed that having the knowledge on accounting is very advantageous, because it means you can put those pieces of those 3 officers easily: the CEO, CFO, and COO. I will try my best to share my knowledge on accounting on a layman's way to make it more simpler, so even if you are at the creative, you will be interested to them. So can we start now? That would be my next episode. Thank you for listening. This is Jenefer of Jenefer Luxury signing off. Ta-da!